Hey guys, today we have Tron Black with us. He's the founder and CEO of the Tron Foundation. And it was recently revealed that Tron Black was the real man behind the entire work of everything that Tron's done, and Justin Sun was just a front of it. So welcome. Did I get that wrong? Did my research team mess up here? So Tron Black is the lead developer at Ravencoin, and Ravencoin is a legacy coin which was launched in 2017 and works on a proof of work algorithm. And I think it is an interesting take on fixing some of the issues with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Core. We're going to discuss about that. We're going to discuss about why proof of work is interesting, what's happening from a regulatory perspective. We're going to discuss what's happening with Ravencoin, and I think it'll be a fun conversation. So,
awesome.
Hi, Tron. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Okay. So what's happening with this bill? What has been passed? What is the issue here? Why is the government talking about proof of work? Why isn't it one and the same thing?
Yeah, so my understanding, and I may get some of this wrong, it's all kind of in a whirlwind, and I catch some of it, but basically the infrastructure bill, which in the U.S. is kind of a must-pass legislation, which is a terrible thing, right? It's like a Christmas tree bill where they just hang things on it, whatever they want, because it's a must-pass. So one of the things that made it in there was basically saying that all of the anybody who kind of effectuates transfers is a broker, right? Which I think the purpose, I believe, or it's been said that the purpose was so that they can go and just to companies like Coinbase and Kraken and those guys and say, hey, you need to do a 1099 something, so they'll probably make rules here in the near future that says you need to report gains, and then of course the taxpayer needs to do the offsets for their cost basis and all that stuff for taxes. And I think that was probably the purpose. The problem is that the wording is terrible, and because of the way it's written, which is just the words, kind of says that it kind of lumps in everybody, right? So effectuating transfer could be everything from wallets to miners to validators to potentially even the phone companies, right? So they're involved in that. They're taking money. So I mean, if you strictly read the wording, you could probably put Verizon and the telcos in. Somebody pointed out you could probably put the telcos in the position of being a broker, which seems absurd. But it's just poorly written language. So people kind of pointed that out. And so then there was a goal to say, all right, we see your intent. So let's fix it and specifically go in there and exclude, you say, oh, this isn't intended to suck in miners and developers and that kind of thing. So let's go ahead and exclude them expressly in the language. And so that was the goal. And there were two different competing not bills, but just language changes for that particular provision. Keep in mind, this is like one provision in this massive bill that's, tons of money, billions of dollars. And so it's just one provision. It's just trying to correct it. So then there was two sets of senators that were coming up with different language. And the crypto community in general felt like the language from one group was better than the other, meaning the ones from Toomey and Loomis. Wyden or Warner? It was Wyden. Anyway, I don't want to get the names wrong because it's kind of like
it's fine. It's fine.
Throw them under the bus, but certainly Toomey and Loomis had better language, and so they did a better job of kind of talking to the community, better job of kind of understanding the impact of this in written language. And there was some other language that was better than what was in there, but not as good. And so the community scrambled to basically and did a really good job of kind of putting the word out to say, hey, call your senators, putting out kind of the tools to do so. Call your senators and saying, choose this language and let's get that in, and this is the one you should help support and vote for. And so what ended up happening was the two different sets of senators got together, I think with Treasury and everything, and kind of came up with better language, like even better than potentially, maybe not better than the second one, better than the first one, but came up with, we'll call it compromise language that was acceptable to most parties. And then they said, oh, yeah, we're not going to put it in there unless everybody agrees on this, meaning it just has to be unanimous. And then one, be careful of my language, but one senator basically said, oh, you need to give me my defense stuff or else, you can't do this. And even the senators that were working on this language said, fine, you can have that, which is really a problem with, I would say, with our governance process, because it's like this, kind of horse trading kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, we'll give you a whole bunch of money for military stuff if you give us this. Anyway, they said yes. And then another senator said, no, that defense stuff can't go in. And so he basically said no. And so now he couldn't get his defense stuff. So the language basically stands as is, and it's, really, really bad language. And so that's the one that got passed, I believe, this morning.
The proof of work and the proof of stake bit of things, right? Where does this past law kind of fall into the purview?
Yeah, so that came in. That was in one of the, I think that was, so out of the two sets of wording that could have made it in, that was the worst one. The lesser of the two. Better than what ended up getting passed, but the worst of the two that were proposed as changes. That got fixed by the senators all coming together and fixing the language, and then none of it got passed because of this horse trading thing that didn't work. And then it's debatable whether, it's also possible that there's, bankers pulling the strings, and the particular senator that wanted the defense thing, he's retiring anyway, so he doesn't care. I'm sure the community could probably, kind of make sure he doesn't get voted in again, but he's retiring anyway, so, kind of, it's all a bit frustrating.
But where does proof of stake fall in all of this, right? Like this bill isn't intended for the purpose, and they have included proof of work mining specifically, and people assumed that it did not involve proof of stake. What is your take on it? Like, does it affect it at all?
Oh, so I think that was just bad wording, but it was better wording than what ended up making it. So there's three levels. There's what made it in, right, and is voted in is now bad law. There's the proof of stake versus proof of work wording, which the community didn't like. And kind of, so the community is supporting the better one. And then these two ultimately agreed, right? The two better, but the best one didn't make it in either. But because of basically our kind of poor way of hanging everything in one bill. So
interesting.
Yeah.
From Ravencoin's perspective, that still remains proof of work. Why do you think that's a superior algo still compared to proof of stake? Why do you think people should still be interested in proof of work?
Yeah, so proof of work is energy intensive, but it's also the best, fairest way of distributing coins. I'm not, unlike some, I'm not anti-proof of stake. Just more proof of work, especially for the distribution, for the initial distribution. Once it's all out there, or most is out there, it's not as as critical. Once you're talking about a few percentage points or something like that to kind of keep the network going. But proof of stake tends to be a sort of a rich get richer kind of scenario, right? I mean, I have a bunch of coins. I have 10%, so I'm getting that that much more, and so it's a rich get richer scenario. It's also not good for distribution. So for distribution, it typically means that the people that created the coins, they have a big bucket of them, and they have to get them out somehow. And that bucket of coins, they can airdrop them. They can have, people can buy them, which kind of sometimes turns them into a security, or at least has implications legally. Once they're all out there, proof of stake isn't too bad. It's definitely less energy intensive, but it's not the fairest way of getting them out there.
I think it's a good point, though. I feel having various stakeholders within an ecosystem doing different things is always a good idea. Mm-hmm. For example, somebody like a miner should be putting in external resources, figuring out better and more efficient ways of mining, improving their hardware, getting cheaper electricity, making sure that they're using renewable sources, etc. And they have very little to do with keeping the coins and buying them at the best price, etc. They're living in their own ecosystem, and they add serious value to the network for proof of work. But in proof of stake, it's like, okay, you keep just the more coins you have, the more value you can add to the ecosystem. And I see what you mean by limiting distribution.
It's not the more value you add necessarily, though. It's just the more coins you have, the more coins you get. You stake them and you get more. So if you have 10%.
Yeah, value add to the growth of the network, right? So like it's good to lock in the tokens, reducing supply, right? But I don't think artificial locking in supply is also the best idea, especially in the beginning when the coin needs to be as distributed as possible, because the more people lock in, the longer it takes for the distribution to get completed. So I'm kind of with you on that.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting way to look at it, and kind of people don't even understand how, Bitcoin would differentiate from something like the proof of stake coins that are out there. So how does Ravencoin differentiate itself from Bitcoin? Like, what changes did you make?
Sure. I'll start with the first changes we made. So before it launched, it went from a 10-minute block time to a 1-minute block time. Went from a 1 megabyte block to a 2 megabyte block. And then the issuance started at 5,000 Raven per block instead of 50, which was Bitcoin. So in general, what that did between the speeding up the block, increasing the block reward, it basically made 21 billion instead of 21 million. And so the math and we did that on purpose, right? Math worked out. So that was before it launched. So it launched, day one with that. The important part, though, and the goal from day one was to make it a platform where you can issue assets on top of it. So most people are familiar with issuing assets on Ethereum, for example, with the ERC20. There's some other platforms where you can issue tokens. Ravencoin is somewhat unique in that you choose a unique name. And that's not really true for Ethereum. Ethereum, you get a unique name, but it's just a 40 character. It's basically the hash of your instance of the contract. So you get a unique name, so you have to choose a unique name. And if it's not unique, then the network will resolve and say you can't use this. And then if two people create the same name at the same time, two different places, one of them will make it into the block, but it kind of uses the same mechanism that prevents a double spend to make it so that there's always a guaranteed unique name. So we have unique names. We also have Name
means ticker here. What do you mean by name? Like
a name. So you create a token, right? I can create the token named Tron hour, that represents an hour of my time, for example. And so if no one else could create that name, Tron hour.
Got it.
Whatever name it is. Now, they have to be greater than 3 characters. It's all uppercase. And some of that stuff's to kind of prevent fraud.
And you're saying that this is not done via a smart contract?
No, smart contracts, you can put a name in. You can put in a name, but
I mean tokenization in general, right? Like for tokenization on the Ravencoin network, and you said that people can tokenize on it, and they'll be able to transfer these tokens to each other.
Yep. That's right.
This is done without smart contracts.
Correct. That's right. Yep. No smart contracts.
So how does that aspect work? Like, how does the security of it work in that case, and how does the fees for the network for the coin I create work in that case?
So there are fees for transfer. There's fees for creating a token. So it's 500 Raven to create a root token. To get your name in that root namespace. And when I talk about namespaces, think about like DNS, right? There's only one Google.com. There's only one, that kind of thing. So if you reserve the name on the network, you have the name permanently. You don't have to pay for it, over and over. That's 500 Raven. If you create a token or in the root namespace, and then you want to create a sub token, which is like a subfolder, you're the only ones that can create that, but you can have any name after that. And those are 100 Raven. Or you can create one. Once you have a root token, you can put hashtag in any name you want. That creates a complete unique name. And those are 5 Raven. And so those are for NFTs. So 5 Raven to create an NFT. And then you can also attach whatever data you want to it. We call it metadata is kind of our term for it. So the data about what the token is. And the data actually goes in IPFS. but the link to that goes in the Ravencoin blockchain. So you can't change the data once you've kind of said this is what the token is. You can put in a PDF, a movie, a folder full of files, whatever you want. But then that's the metadata for that token. If you leave it reissuable, you can like make another version, say this is like V2, but it keeps both. And so
you said it takes 5 Raven coins to make one NFT. Is it like one NFT or an NFT set of multiple?
One NFT, one token, one NFT. So an NFT.
Got it.
Yeah, there's
I hear you. I hear you.
And it's a unique name. So guaranteed unique. No one could make that name again.
So there is a cost attached to making an NFT on the network as well. So as the cost of Ravencoin goes up or goes down, how does the creation of NFT become cheaper or more expensive? Like, does it, or is this variable?
It gets more expensive.
It will get more expensive. So wouldn't that deter people from creating more NFTs on the network?
It does, but it's also the chain becomes more valuable. People can buy in Raven now if they want to create them in the future. But that is a criticism. People have said, well, what if it gets too expensive? But one of the reasons it gets more expensive is because the chain becomes more secure. So it starts to become, a chain where you could, tokenize, the Fort Knox, the gold and things like that as it becomes more secure. And so there may come a time, where it becomes more expensive to use kind of the most valuable chain. Yeah.
Interesting. And Ravencoin clearly doesn't fall under the meme coin category. It doesn't really fall under the smart contract base layer category. It sort of falls under, like if you'd say competition or like something similar, it would be more similar to something like a Litecoin, if that would be the case.
I wouldn't say that. Litecoin is just kind of a clone of Bitcoin, meaning it doesn't have the asset layer and things like that. So people have created over 28,000 different assets, some of them being root assets, some of them sub-assets, and some of them NFTs. And so some of them bought them because they're name squatting on really, really good names. And some are tokenizing wine, buildings, land, time, art, certificates of authenticity for art, certificates of authenticity for expensive wines. I mean, people are doing lots of different things with it. And so there's like this whole wide variety of use cases, and that just keeps growing. And there's now games, there's an NFT trading site, there's just stuff being added. And this isn't being powered by any central thing. It's just people recognizing kind of the power of Ravencoin and then saying, oh, look what I can do. And then they're just building.
Got it. In comparison to other proof of work networks in terms of distribution and decentralization and security, where do you think Ravencoin really fits in?
Yeah, so very, very decentralized. One of the goals, in fact, one of its original things is we swapped out the mining algorithm to make it so that it was very, very hard to build an ASIC. So that lasted quite a while. They made an ASIC, but it was only slightly better than a GPU. And so the algorithm was modified again, and it's holding pretty well because it uses kind of all aspects of a GPU, meaning a graphics card, just like a gaming computer graphics card. It uses almost all of it, meaning kind of expands and uses the memory, uses the processing power, uses everything. So to create an ASIC would end up looking a lot like a video card, and so they just haven't come out yet. It'll be difficult to make an ASIC, which helps with making it so that it's just commodity hardware. Somebody who has a gaming rig can basically switch it over to mine Ravencoin at night, and then game with it the next day, kind of thing. And that makes the distribution of the mining very, very wide and broad, which is great. And that's what we're trying to keep. We don't want big data centers that are just mining Ravencoin. Although one thing that's happened recently is because of the Ethereum change, we've recently jumped up to, not always, but recently jumped up to number one most profitable coin to mine. And so our mining rates are going up really, really fast currently.
How does one determine the mining ratio? That's like electricity spent versus the amount of money you're making, right?
Exactly.
So how do I find this out? What can I go to a website?
Yeah, you can. It's what to mine, WHATTOMINE.com. What to mine. Yeah.
One of the points that people always raise is electricity and wastage of energy when it comes to proof of work. What are your thoughts on these statements? So whether it's a lot of it or little of it, like I think if Ravencoin was to become extremely big as well, you're still going to spend more energy to produce it, right? Like the hash rate algorithm remains the same, right?
So the more people that are mining, the algorithm actually adjusts. Unlike Bitcoin, which adjusts every 2016 blocks, which is on Bitcoin is about every 2 weeks. We had that same thing when we started, about every 2016 blocks. But for us, because our blocks are faster, meaning 10 times faster, that was about 1.4 days. And we ran into a point where it was like profitable to mine. And so a lot of people mined, and then it got like much harder. And so it dropped down in profitability. And then a bunch of people dropped off, and then it went 2016 blocks, and then it got really profitable again. And so it was oscillating. And so along the way, we did fix that algorithm. So now it adjusts every block, like a small amount every block. And so the more people that are mining, it does use, doesn't necessarily use, it would use more power because more people are mining, but it adjusts the difficulty so that, the same amount or the same time frame. So it's still indexing on that kind of 1 minute blocks.
The network's consuming energy and this being a waste of energy. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's a fair thing? Like when Elon Musk says that Tesla's not accepting Bitcoin anymore, but Tesla cars will be charged by all sorts of energy, whether it's renewable or not, but he won't take Bitcoin because it's being mined by, unsure type of electricity.
Yeah, I think he was pressured by certain groups to do that. But in fairness, he went and kind of did this thing where they're evaluating it and said they would take Bitcoin again once most of it was coming from renewables. And they've done an analysis, and a lot of people kind of switched to renewables and also to stranded energy, which is another thing where they're flaring gas, right? So they just flare the gas because there's no way to generate it, put it on the network, right? To put it on the electricity network. And so now there's a way to basically go take that gas, run a generator, and that gas would have been flared, just straight CO2, and now it would be burned and produce.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Does Ravencoin have a halving, and when is it? When is the next one?
It does. So the halving is every 4 years, same as Bitcoin. And so the first halving, so we're 3.5 years in. First halving will be right now. It's targeting looks like mid-January 2022. So roughly 6 months away. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then it will drop from 5,000 coins per block to 2,500. And at that point, about half of the Ravencoin will have been issued at that point. So this is like getting in early. Like if you were getting in kind of in the first 4 years of Bitcoin, we're obviously doing, I have a lot higher market cap than Bitcoin did kind of back then, but that's just because there's tons more people aware of crypto than there was back then.
The narrative over the last few years has changed from Bitcoin that was trying to be peer-to-peer cash is now becoming more of a store of value. And I think it's fair. Like, it's really hard to use Bitcoin as a means of payment. I think it's hard to make payments and build a sustainable business for payments around even, the forks of Bitcoin or Ethereum or most of these other cryptocurrencies except stable coins. And that's why we've had such a massive rise in stable coins of late. Where does Ravencoin fit in? Is it going to be a store of value, or is it?
It can be both. It can be both. So I don't think there's a problem paying with Bitcoin if you're using the Lightning Network. The fees are low enough. I think
it's not about the fees, right, Tron? Like that's not the point I'm raising at all. I'm saying fees is one thing, right? But by the time the guy, let's assume I set up a business, right? My business revolves around me paying for everything in fiat, right? Whether it's my employees or my electricity bill. My change I give back to my customers. Let's assume I run a mom and pop shop, right?
Yep.
Now, I'm getting paid in Bitcoin, but the time I get it and I can transfer it and get my cash out, the value has changed more or less. But I cannot depend on that instability to run my business. Like, well, for example, let's assume when Bitcoin was 60,000, I set up my business. I'm like, oh, I'm going to just run it off Bitcoin. Now it's 30,000. I've lost 50%. I've given most of that money to my employees and I'm not even left with the amount of Bitcoin. I'm saying it's from an individual perspective, from a very, very micro perspective, it can work. If I want to send you like $20, I can do it. But if I want to scale it up, and I think that's where the payment problems for most of these legacy coins come in, right? And if Bitcoin is gold, then other coins are sort of semi-precious metal so far till they become more interesting, more important, etc. But so far, that's the way I kind of divide it. So my question to you is, where do you see Ravencoin be, and do you agree with my statement?
Sort of. So I agree it's volatile. So I agree that by the time you get it, it could go down some. Even with the biggest drops, I mean, you can convert it within an hour. So you might get an hour's worth of drops. And granted, that could be 10, 15%, but it's probably not going to be
it's not sustainable. 50%. It's not. If I send you an invoice and you are in US time, you send it in daytime to me. I'm in Singapore time. And by the time I get it, it's like 4 hours. I don't think that it's a sustainable model. And there are companies that convert it, but why add friction to a business when you can do it without friction? Like, I'm saying that it's adding unnecessary friction to a business which could do without it.
Okay, so let's compare it against two things. Compared against stable coins, I agree with you. Stable coins are awesome. They travel very quickly, meaning as quickly as Bitcoin, and you don't need to worry about the value changing a lot, and it's great. If you're going to compare it to some of the U.S. Standards of like doing ACH and it takes 2 days, yes, you get your money, but it takes 2 days. It's not good money for the internet, and so I think I agree. Payments in stable coins is good internet payment money. I think it's great. I think it's great they exist. I think absent stable coins, I think Ravencoin could act as a payment. You can do now payments, and you can people are selling donuts and things via Ravencoin already. So I think it works good. I think stable coins probably do work better for settlement. I think something like Strike, which is using Bitcoin and kind of denominating dollars, moving it fast enough, converting between them, I think that's also a great solution. It's just moving the value and then converting it, and I think that works. The nice thing is this is all programmable money, and all these things can be fully automated. You can make it so that, hey, go ahead and pay me in Raven, and I instantly want to convert it to a stable coin, or I want to convert it to Bitcoin, or to whatever I want to hold.
Right. Yeah. And I think with the capabilities you have with Ravencoin, you can do that and possibly launch a USDC, USDT on it as well.
So we can launch a stablecoin. We're talking to a company about that now. Yeah. Now the weird thing is, so we don't have, unlike some of the networks, meaning Tron, EOS, things like that, because we didn't raise money. We don't have a big bucket of money that some of these other projects have to do those things. But what we do have is an amazing community that, in many cases, have raised funds for legal work, have raised funds for security audits, have raised funds for various different things. So when we want to do something and the community's behind it, the community has stepped up and we've built some incredible things. So then the same thing may happen with stablecoin.
Let me tell you what I'm excited about Ravencoin right now, and tell me what I'm missing and add more stuff for me. So one, halving is coming in January. So that's exciting. Then you're having the talks with some of the bigger exchanges in the US, hopefully, should have something going on that end. Then you have potential of getting a stable coin, and I hope it's one of the bigger ones, the ones that actually remain stable onto the network.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that they're fully backed, right? So the money's being held custodially and is auditable and fully backed. I mean, that's the important part. So the size doesn't matter unless you really need more of it than it exists, right? You're transferring millions of dollars or billions of dollars, and so the size doesn't matter, I think, as long as it's trusted and actually exists and fully one-to-one backed.
Yeah, people who've been in the space for a while would have used USDT on Omni quite a bit. And I think that's what we had before USDT went on to the ETH network. And now it's pretty much on a lot of other networks as well.
It is, yep.
And I think using Omni wasn't easy, right? Like using the BTC network for USDT when the way we used it. How is Ravencoin's interface going to be different?
Well, see, that's one of the things we were trying to solve. So Omni was basically Mastercoin, right? Rebranded, renamed, and it was using the Bitcoin network as its security. And the problem with that is the security is great, but because Bitcoin is kind of blissfully unaware of stuff being put into this op return, we'll call it the comments field of each transaction, sort of unaware of it. It says, hey, well, some Bitcoin needs to move with every transaction and things like that. So when we built Ravencoin, one of the things we were trying to do is build that layer in with Ravencoin, right, which is clone of Bitcoin, so the security of Bitcoin, not the mining security, but the code security, and then fix these like problems where they were fixable, right, where you could make it not clunky, and it also allows you to do things where on some of these networks, you can easily lose these tokens, especially when they're built on top of the Bitcoin network. You can actually lose them. Ravencoin, you can't lose assets. You could send them to a burn address, for example. If you didn't want them anymore, you could send them an address that is provably unspendable. But you can't oh, it's gone. What happened? Oh, shoot, he's kind of screwed up. We made a bad transaction. The network can kind of enforce it and say, hey, this needs to go to a legit address, even if you can tell it doesn't have a private key, so it's burned.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, and this is what will improve the UX UI capabilities of these interfaces as well, right? Because now things become more usable as well. I think this answers an interesting point, like this conversation so far, that people should get involved with Ravencoin one way or the other, right? Like there is some interesting stuff happening. There is, I love any coin that has decentralization in its DNA, that has distribution in its DNA, that's trying to do something from a community perspective. Like there's a lot of holding power with such projects, and they're able to maintain value pretty well. But I think with that focus, the problem comes is that you have low marketing budgets, you have low way to kind of get big names involved in the project. You have low money to get listed on big exchanges. Like there are you're doing things with one hand tied behind your back, and
we are. It's a complete trade-off. Yep, it's more decentralized and more fair, but it's that's the downside is you can't run big ads and things like that. Yep.
Yeah, and there is value in what you guys are doing. I think there is a lot of interesting stuff from your side that is worth keeping an eye on. I think one of the projects worth following. But we've understood why to do that. But how can people do that? How can people get a little more involved? Give easy stuff so that it's not like they're spending the whole day. But what are the small things that people can do to get involved with?
Well, if you just want to hold some, right? Just hold some Raven. You can get the T0 mobile app and just get some. So just Android, iOS, get T0 app and just buy it. You can buy it with a debit card or your bank account or whatever. So if you just want to be, kind of like, I want to participate in that kind of the ecosystem, you can do that. If you want to create an asset, I would get some Ravencoin from T0, and then I would go to mangofarmassets.com, which is just a web wallet, so it's fairly easy. You can do it on your mobile phone, and it's 500 Raven to create it, and you probably need 501 Raven because you need just a tiny bit for fees. It'll be a fraction of that last Raven, but you can create your own asset. So you can go to so create an asset, pick a name, and then you have that. You can say I want 1,000 of them, 1,000,000 of them. You can attach data to them, to say what your token is about. You can go look at if you just want to go look at one of the explorers, go to ravencoin.foundation is one of the websites, and go to one of the explorers, and you can see all the assets people have created, and you can click on them and you can see the data and NFT stuff and things that are attached to it. So that's probably a good start. I mean, I could go on and on for days on things too.
Yeah, because see, the whole DeFi movement is why many of Ethereum and EVM based chains are moving tremendously. Like that entire volume of users.
Yep.
Like it's pretty prima facie of the amount of interest that has been able to generate.
It is. So in that vein, one thing that we are doing is you can move Raven over to the other chains. So there's a place you can basically take your Raven and hop it over to the Binance Smart Chain, right, with an EVM as P-Raven, right? So the Raven's locked up on the chain, P-Raven shows up over there, and then you can use the DeFi to kind of borrow against it and things like that. We want to be able to do the same thing with assets, and so we've written the code to do that. Right now we're going through the security audits to make sure that code is safe before it's activated. And then you should be able to do the same thing with assets in the future. So,
but that's still outbound, right, Tron? Like, see, the thing is that you're getting stuff done on your network, and then people move it to another network, which increases the transactions on the other network. But networks like Ravencoin should have like that one thing, at least one thing to begin with, where people are like, okay, I will move from Binance Smart Chain to the Ravencoin network. And I think that would be an interesting next step to kind of think about what could that be. Like, why would people want to use, and move port from one to the other?
Okay, so yeah, so since we don't have smart contracts, right, that's not going to happen. But we do have the ability to do atomic swaps. We also have NFTs, so you can go to Ravenbay, RVNBAY.com, and there's a whole bunch of NFTs there. And then you can also go to raventrader.net, and that's a place where you can basically put tokens up and have them where someone else basically takes the other side of the transaction and signs it. And so it's sort of it's not a smart contract, but it does have the ability to do some of these things.
It was really nice to have you on the show, Tron. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Oh, it was great to be on the show. I really appreciate it. I mean, this really is super important for Ravencoin to be on shows like yours because we don't have that huge marketing budget. And so, for the people that watch your show and things like that to learn about it through this is great. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it comes at cost of me calling you the founder of Tron Network, so it's fine if you're willing to lift
church right here. But I'll after I see my therapist, we'll get that all sorted out.
Awesome.
This is Altcoin Buzz Spotlight with Shash.
So when you launched the Tron Foundation, you did launch the proof of stake mechanism with the Tron network that you launched as well.
I don't like to be closely associated with that. So we're going to built in 2017, launched on January 3rd, 2018. That was actually Bitcoin's 9th birthday. We launched with a Genesis block that had text from the same publication that Bitcoin used, and actually had Bitcoin in the article name, which is kind of cool.
And that was the same time you launched the Tron Foundation and the fork of Ethereum.
Yeah, I was really busy doing the Tron Foundation and everything all at the same time. Yeah.
Fantastic. So Tron Black is that's not your real name, right?
Yeah, that's my real name.
No ways. Your parents didn't call you.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's awesome.
Obviously, born a while ago, born before the Disney movie. My dad was a chemical engineer, so electron. I got the Tron part. So, yeah, it's on my birth certificate.
If you don't have funds, then who's paying for this interview, man? How?